Well, good evening, everybody. Uh, just a question to get started. How many of you have been to the Carr Astronomical Observatory? A few people. Okay, well, this will be mostly for the benefit of the people online then and anybody else who hasn't been there. I guess I'm one of the people who has been associated with the Carr Observatory since its very start. And so this is sort of a trip down memory lane for me, and I hope that you'll find it an enjoyable experience. The story starts in September of 1997 when I got a phone call late one afternoon, and it was Cliff Carr, a life member of the Toronto Centre, and he opened the conversation by saying, "I'd like to discuss donation with you." And as the story unfolded, uh, Cliff had uh, set up an observatory on a piece of land that he owned to the southeast of Thornbury, Ontario. Uh, and it was part of a holding that his family had accumulated over the years. And he was enjoying this observatory. In fact, it was a very unique structure in the sense that his telescope was on the top of a two-story high tower, uh, actually something like a concrete silo. They had a cottage at the base and a spiral staircase that went up to the observing floor. And this was all very nice. And uh, the problem was that he had a neighbor across the road from him who had a 500-watt uh, yard light that was right on Cliff's meridian. So, for those of you who don't know, the meridian is the north south line. And a lot of objects that you want to look at or image, well, the best place to put it when you want to observe it is on the meridian. And you had this hideously bright light shining right along that north south line. So Cliff had managed over the years to come to an agreement of sorts with the owner of the property that he could switch off the light when he wanted to observe, and then he would switch it back on when he was done and go home. And this worked for a few months until the neighbor finally decided he wasn't going to play this game anymore, and he jimmied the switch so it no longer worked. Uh, Cliff was frustrated, and because of the nature of his business and the family holdings and so on, he literally bought the farm. He decided to show up at the man's door one day with a check and said, "I'll give you this much for the property." And so he bought the farm, and now he had two more, he had an extra property. What am I going to do with this? And at the time, we had been talking about the possibility of replacing our existing dark sky observatory at Schomburg. And so uh, Cliff came along with this offer. Well, it was tantalizing. And on a cold November day in 1997, the Council of the Toronto Centre made a field trip out to Thornbury in the middle of a raging snowstorm, or the tail ends anyway. At any rate, your entire council was on the road that day, and the corporation would have been in big trouble if there had been any untoward incident along the highway. Here's the site when we first saw it, and you can see the snow. It had actually eased off by then, but the road was a sheet of ice. And for those of you who have been at the property, you know the place has an access road that has a lot of bumps in it, big bumps up and down hills. And so this was not a friendly place to come when you had city drivers, some of whom did not have snow tires. Anyway, we got inside and the house was semi-finished. As you can see, here's the present day kitchen area. There's nothing there except the drywall. The basement is somewhat unfinished, but there was a potential. And after a few weeks of discussion, the donation was legally finalized, and we acquired the property just before the turn of the new year. And the following May, we had our first open house on the property. And a lot of people turned up, over 120 members actually that day. including Fred Troyer, who was our longest serving counselor at the time. Uh, Fred was marking his 60th anniversary on the council. He held virtually every major portfolio and position in the Toronto Centre during the course of his lifetime. And he was really pleased to see that we had this property. Cliff officially turned over the keys, as it were, at the ceremony to Marianne Harrington, who was the president of the time. And we had a great time that first day. You can see it was a sunny day, it was beautiful, and the vista that day was really, really nice. Well, then the problem was, what do we do with it? And here's a site plan of the place as drawn up by another big player in the history of the Carr Observatory, Jeff Brown. And here Jeff has basically marked out everything, including the all-important tile bed for the septic tank on the north side of the property. And of course, the warning is you do not put anything into the ground of major depth in that area. And you can see that we have the pond and the excavated material to the south of the house. They had to dump the excavation for the basement and foundation of the house someplace, and they just put it out there in the middle of a field. Anyway, that was the property then. And we're thinking, okay, what are we going to do with this place now that we've got it? And in the summer of 1998, we actually started work on the property. We installed a red light system inside the house, red light fixtures outside as well. So we had dual white and red light systems. We had a fairly substantial library, and we moved it up to the site and installed it in the basement. We began installation of a full kitchen upstairs, thanks to a donation of kitchen cabinetry. And we started planning for the first observatory. And I remember the night that Marianne and I went up to Thornbury to do the presentation to the Thornbury Planning Committee to apply for the building permit, because that was also the time when we discovered that we'd been broken into. Our first and only break-in, they got into the garage and stole a lawnmower. And we duly reported to the OPP, who actually found the lawnmower at the perpetrator's weekly garage sale the following weekend. Anyway, that also led to us installing some anti-burglary measures later that summer as well. And we haven't had a break-in since, knock wood. Well, the question was, what are we going to do about a telescope for this planned observatory? And we had all sorts of ideas that were flying around. But Cliff once again came to the rescue. He phoned me and said, oh, I'm getting a DFM. So this is an expensive Cassegrain telescope system, a 16-incher. It is not cheap, let's put it that way. Would the center need a large telescope? Because at the time he had a 16-inch LX200 Meade telescope. And so he offered it to us as a donation as well. Well, you don't pass up something like that, do you? And so we said, well, thank you, Cliff, that's great. And we put that into the plans, which immediately meant we had to upscale our plans for an observatory. Once again, Jeff Brown came to the rescue and conceived the idea of the now what is known as the Jeff Brown Observatory. And in July 2000, a crew from a company down in Mississauga that builds super jails, among other things, showed up with this steel frame. And what had happened was that Jeff used his contacts through his architectural business. He dealt with a lot of companies that worked for the provincial government. And the owner of this particular company was particularly entranced by the idea of building an observatory. And he not only donated the materials for this steel frame, but he also paid for the crew to come up and install it on site. And so within 6 hours, we had the frame of this observatory, including the sliding roof, all ready to go. And there's the crew with their finished product. And then it was up to us to do the rest of it. Jeff Brown immediately tested out the roof, and you can see that one manpower does indeed slide this structure back and forth. And in fact, for a number of years, we actually used a boat winch at great personal risk to move it back and forth until eventually one of our other members, Tony Horvatin, came up with the idea of a chain drive to take the work away, as well as the danger of a boat winch out of control. Well, anyway, as we were building the walls and the roof of the observatory, we also had to worry about installing the pier, and there's a lot of work that went into actually getting the steel plates and the base of the now telescope pier truly vertical and stabilized within that observatory floor. And there's the finished product in, I believe it's 2000. We finally got this thing done, and the observatory pretty much ready to go. Then it was time to actually clad the structure with siding and install the telescope. In July of 2001, here's the observatory as it existed then, with the observing room and the LX200. And you can see that we have an observing room, a dark, a warm room where the control computer is, and lots of hardwired power and internet connections within the observing floor. And we have these drop-down desktops, which we still use today. Plenty of place to put out observing charts and equipment, eyepieces, et cetera, et cetera. And the idea was that not only did you have space for the telescope itself, but there was a lot of floor space there so that other people could use their own smaller telescopes within the observatory as well. Here's a picture of the warm room. It hasn't changed very much since those days. The only exception is that every once in a while we have to sweep out the hundreds of cluster flies that die on the premises. That's one of the problems of being out in the country. And here's the completed observatory ready for first flight. So a lot of man hours went into finishing off this particular structure, but it was all good and it served us well up to this point. The telescope itself, eventually we decided that we needed to upgrade it. There were problems with the LX200's drive system. It went out west and eventually found a home with, I think it was the Regina Center's telescope observatory, and then they in turn moved it out to the west coast. And last count, it was, I think it's at the Sunshine Coast Observatory, but I'm not entirely certain. But at any rate, there we are. And we've replaced that telescope since as well. But it's great the way it is. Well, what goes on at the CAO? Well, there's a lot of membership activities that were going on before COVID shut us down. We had frequent open house and awards presentations at the site, along with a picnic program, rocket launches, and so on. We've had digital imaging workshops there, various courses. Members have done Perseid and Leonid meteor shower observing there. And over the years, we've also developed an additional facility, the Sue Laura Observatory, donated by the wives of two of our members. If you can't beat them, join them. And that observatory is dedicated to imaging, and it now has an 8-inch Schmidt, 8-inch Ritchie-Chrétien telescope in it for digital imaging. Of course, there have been adventures along the way. Jeff Brown discovered this in the year after we started operating things on the floor of the Jeff Brown Observatory as we came to know it. Notice the snowdrift, which is about 9 feet high at this point, or 3 meters, and Jeff has cunningly cut a staircase over it so that he could get through to the observatory's entrance. And this is one of the things that continues to this day, although this last winter we didn't have nearly as much snow. But typically there's 1 to 2 meters of snow deposited on the grounds during the winter. So it can be a challenge to get onto the site. In 2007, we were fortunate to get a Trillium Foundation grant, which financed the building of this structure along the front and side of the house. So it gives us full access for physically disabled people. We've got a wheelchair ramp as well as the deck, which allows you to get around to the main entrance of the upstairs level. And then down below is another entrance for the lower level where the library, another bathroom, and the meeting space happens to be in the building. So you can see that on the right side, we have the names of all the people who are involved in the building of the ramp. We had a contractor put in the frame, and then we went in on our own, as we did with the house, and basically laid the planks for the decking. And there are a number of people who are listed here, including yours truly. One of the benefits of doing all this work at the site is you learn some skills. I learned how to mud drywall as one of my tasks. And in fact, I ended up taping the entire big meeting room down in the basement of the place. So yeah, I do have a useful skill. And in 2008, we observed the 20th anniversary with the OHAP, as it came to be called. You can see here all the awards recipients and the other people who took part in that particular program. Well, a place like this needs constant improvements. And Charles Darrow, one of my successors in the presidency, came up with the concept of the modal or my own dome lot. And here's how Jeff Brown and Blake Nancaro envisaged this. Blake actually produced this drawing of the site with the idea of where these particular domes could be. At this point, we've actually installed the 5 modals, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we do have room to expand if we wish. And in addition, you can see here on the diagram, there are also some other things. There's the GBO, which is the main observatory. There's the observing pad, which is approximately 50 feet long and about 8 feet wide, and it's aligned exactly east-west. So the pavers on that are marked north-south. So you have meridian built into the observing pad. The THO is an observatory that used to be on Tony Horvatin's brother's farm, and he moved it over to the Carr Observatory property a number of years ago, and you can use that for parking a telescope if you're on the property for an extended period of time. So we have followed with this development plan to the very day, and we actually are looking at the possibility of installing modal number, let's see, we've since put in modal 6, I think. And I think the next one is modal 7 that might go in. So anyway, we're following along in the plan at this point. And each of these has power and internet connections that we have wired in through the property. So a lot of work has gone into all of this stuff. The Solar Observatory was built in 2018. Here you can see the telescope, the 8-inch Recreation, and to just bolster the capabilities of this imaging facility, we recently had Don Stewart, our IT man. He acquired a couple of servers that we've installed in the library of the house, and we've got 8 terabytes of storage capability on site now. So you don't have to worry about running out of storage space with your images. You can image all night and just download the stuff either before you leave or remotely from home. CAO today, this is an aerial shot of the property showing pretty much our entire property. So you can see the house, you can see the modals and some of the other ancillary buildings. There's the infamous pond. And the tree line that you see down the left side of the image, that belongs to us. What happened was that originally our property line fell short of that. It was about midway through that field to the right of the trees. But that was owned by Cliff. And what he did was he sold us at a discounted price a strip of land from the adjacent property that includes the left side of that tree line. So it's a permanent buffer against any light that might emanate from a property that's built on the property next door. And so he was really thinking long term about the viability of the observatory. It's on Niagara Escarpment property, so we have very few neighbors that are going to be developing anything. That big hill of trees that you see in the center of the photograph is Bruce Trail land. And in fact, the trail runs just to the right of those of that brush that's midway up the hill. And our property line is where that green field structure is between the pond and that string of shrubbery. So it's a well-protected investment for us. And our property goes down probably another third of the way to the lower right in this image. So it's a total of about 53 acres or thereabouts. So in addition to all the activities that our members have, we've been also using this place as an outreach facility. And we've had a number of users, particularly Scouts Canada groups have come to us from Toronto, Streetsville, Barrie, and Collingwood to use the property for astronomy camps. We've had some private engagements, and more recently, we've started to do presentation to Probus clubs who are very enthusiastic and are very generous. And so we're continuing these kinds of things once we start up with our summer programs at the beginning of May. We also have some professional collaborations that we've been carrying on. Since 2005, we've had an all-sky Sentinel camera from the University of Western Ontario's Meteor Recording Project. It's part of a network that they operate, and we've contributed to the recovery of a number of meteorite falls over the years. So it is a significant contributor to meteor science. And you can see this example of a meteor that triggers the camera and records the trajectory of the incoming meteor. And using triangulation with the other stations, they're able to tell a lot more about the actual path of the object, and they can even tell if there was a fall and where to look if they can recover it at all. Since then, we've done a few post-COVID improvements to make the place a little bit more safe for users. More importantly, we've got UV sterilization systems on our well water supply, as well as in the furnace to handle the circulating air in the place. Bit of isolation between the levels of the house so that we can also control the spread of any possible disease organisms. Uh, we have upgraded the wireless and the wired networks, and uh, uh, again, we've had the installation of the 8 terabytes of on-site server storage. More recently, after a number of months of negotiation, we entered into an agreement with the University of Toronto to host an observatory of theirs on the property. And this was funded by a grant from the Dunlap Institute, and it proceeded very, very quickly. Uh, Once we had the agreement in place, the deck was installed within a week in August. The dome, which was donated to the U of T from a company that was using it for other purposes in the Toronto area, actually transferred the ownership, and the university moved the dome and erected it on the deck in late August. We had a work party in October that was not only our members, but also I think it was about 10 graduate students and staff from the university. They were up to their knees in mud as we excavated the trench to put the power lines in. But we got it done in a day, and they have their power and internet installed in that October work party. And they installed their telescope, a plane wave reflector, in February. And they're now just getting it up and running and getting rid of the bugs. So that observatory will be operational this summer. Now, why is that important? Well, uh, a lot of astronomers end up with small observatory telescopes that they have to use instead of the 10-meter babies and so on. That's practical reality. And so one of the purposes of this observatory is to teach astronomy students how to manage and design a research project using a small telescope. So the plane wave is not only going to do imaging, but also will have photometric and spectroscopic instruments available to it. And they'll be bringing their students up for overnight observing runs, as well as doing remote observing with this facility. But more importantly, we have some benefits to the center of this project. For one thing, all of those users will become members of the Toronto Centre. So that gives us some membership revenue, which is good. We have the working collaboration of, opportunities with research faculty at the U of T, and they are very, very um, encouraging and very enthusiastic about the possibilities. So that means that as members of the Toronto Centre, you have an opportunity to get involved with actual research programs if you'd like to do so. More importantly, uh, we'll get to use the telescope when the U of T isn't using it. And because of the way that dome is set up, it can be run remotely. You can use that telescope from home once it's up and running. So again, it's a big plane wave. It's bigger than our telescope in the GBO. So there's good potential there. And the University of Toronto is sharing our operating expenses as a result. They are going to help us with the 5G internet connection that will vastly improve our internet services on the site. And more importantly, they're willing to help us foot the bill to clear the road in the wintertime. For the last 25 years, we have had to either park the car at the base of the hills and walk in, or just not go. But this January, we started plowing the road, and so we have on-site access to the parking lot and the road all the way from Laurie. So you can drive in. The only thing you have to do is remember you need snow tires and a four-wheel drive to negotiate the road. But we can now get into the property and actually not leave the cars anywhere in the neighborhood. So that's a really big bonus for us. So we'll begin supervised weekends on site in May of this coming year. And we have a spring work party that if you're interested, we will be happy to teach you some of those tricks that we've learned over the years about, uh, running this property and some of the tasks that we have to do to get it ready for the summer observing season. We have an open house and awards picnic scheduled for Saturday, 6th of July. And that's when we're hoping to actually do presentations of the Toronto Centre Awards for 2022 and 2023. We'd like to do those in person on site. We plan to offer new user orientation sessions throughout the summer, and those will be announced through the email forum. And we do have one of the modals that is available now to lease. The current occupant has decided that they no longer feel that the modal meets their needs. And so the observatory itself is available for sale, and the site is available for lease from the Toronto Centre. So if anybody's interested in that, you can talk to me about it, and we'll be happy to give you the information. But basically, that's it about the CAO. We hope that you will enjoy the site. We've made a lot of improvements over the years, and it's bigger and better, as it were, every year. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ralph, for that trip down memory lane. Lots of good memories. And about all the news as well, about the site. Do we have questions in the room? Right.
How big is that plane wave telescope?
I can't remember if it's a 19 or a 24 inch that they're talking about. Anyway, it's got, for that sky, it will do a good job. So, our telescope is a 16 incher, so it'll pick up a couple of magnitudes better.
Any other questions in the room? How about online?
We have a comment and a question online. A comment from Grace Horvatin, who says, the trees were so small then. As for a question, we have one from Atul Dave. Recently, I tried to visit the observatory, but I was informed that since I am visiting for the first time, I need to go through orientation. Now, you mentioned that there's an orientation coming. Will that be posted on the website? Will that be presented on a mailing list? How will that be communicated?
Okay,
and the second question is, what is the process to book?
Okay, thank you for the questions. As far as the orientation sessions are concerned, because of the nature of the plumbing system, among other things, and the fact that we do have an alarm system in place, we need to put you through a training session where you learn how to open the place without flooding the the house, burning the place down, or having the police come visiting because you tripped the alarm system. So the orientation is about a couple of hours, and we'll be offering it throughout the year, mostly on Saturdays, and those will be announced through the email forum for the members. Again, usage of the observatory is restricted to members of the Toronto Centre. And so it is important that your membership is paid up and that you attend this particular kind of session before you are allowed to use the place solo. Now, if there's a supervisor on site or there are other people who have experience with opening the site who are willing to let you do to attend, you can come to the site on a weekend when it is open and supervised, but otherwise it's restricted. Okay. As far as the booking fees are concerned, we do review that from time to time to make sure that we can meet our expenses. And currently, we do have a scheme of both daily visits. with or without overnight accommodation, which can be either you camping or we do have bed space for about uh, 9 people, I think it is, inside the house, as on a first come, first served basis. And so you can book that if you wish online, and the fees are slightly different for those. The other thing, which is the really nice bargain, I think, is we offer a season pass. It runs with the financial year of the center, which is from October the 1st until the following September. And for a single fee, which currently is about $150 or thereabouts, you have unrestricted access to booking the site for as many nights as you like. It's just that we restrict it to no more than about 4 nights at a time, just to give people a fair chance at using the place. But we found over the years that this system works quite well. It's never been abused, and people generally have a good time being up there. Okay.
Will there be a second try with the Messier Marathon this year?
Okay, good question. We did try to organize a Messier Marathon this year. Unfortunately, the weather did not cooperate. The weekends that were optimal for it happened to be some of the few weekends when we actually had snow on the property and so on, and access wasn't good. The weather wasn't good anyway. We'll have to see. I think number one, we'll have to look at whether there's an optimal weekend in the fall that would allow us to do the marathon. The second thing will be whether people are interested in doing it, and we'll see.
All right. Why don't we stop there? We're running a little bit late tonight. Thanks again, Ralph.